Today we're going to be installing MySQL with replication encrypted by SSL on Ubuntu 22.04 LTS. Let's get straight into it. Okay, cool. So you can see I've got two systems, both running Ubuntu 22.04 LTS, and they've been assigned a randomly generated IP address. What we're going to do today is go through the full process of installing MySQL and setting one up to be the master and the other one to be the replication slave. So let's get straight into it. On both systems, we want to install MySQL. And you can see I'm getting this lock error on this machine, so what I'm going to do is just reboot it really quick. Perfect, this system's rebooted now. Let's try that again. Awesome. Now on both systems, we want to stop MySQL. Now that MySQL's been stopped, we want to initialize MySQL using the default values. And then we can start the MySQL service. And by the way, all the commands for this will be in the description. Okay, this is the only step that might be different for you. What we need to do is check if MySQL has set a default password. So we'll run this command on both machines. If that's blank, then that's fine. We can just log straight into MySQL using a blank password. Once we're logged in, we want to set a root password on MySQL. Now for now, I'm just going to set it to root. Please don't do this in a production environment. Awesome, now that's been set, we can run through the secure installation for MySQL. So for this, I'm just going to go with no, do not validate, yes, remove anonymous, no to disallow root, yes to remove the test databases, and yes to reload. And I'll do the same thing on the other system. Okay, so now we'll focus on MySQL1. What we want to do is make sure that the firewall on the Ubuntu system allows connections from MySQL. And then we can edit the MySQL configuration on this box. So what you want to do is scroll down until these two bind addresses and just comment those out. Then go right down to the bottom of the file, make a bit of extra space, and comment this in. Okay, so what this is doing is this is setting a unique server ID to 1 for the master. It's setting a log bin, the bin log format, and the sync bin log parameters. And because we want to use an SSL connection for the replication side, what we have to do is set the SSL certificates. This is something we'll create in a second. So we can save that and exit. What we want to do now is create that directory location. Now I'm setting this gmod 777 because the OpenSSL commands didn't seem to run unless I gave these permissions. We'll change these later on. And now we can start creating these certificates. So the first one is the ca-key.pem. And next we'll create the ca-cert.pem. So for the country code, leave that blank, blank, leave that blank, blank again. The only important one is the common name. Now these all have to be different, but matching for each responsibility. So the CA, the server, and the client certificates will all have matching common names. So for this one, I'm just going to set it to mysql.ca. Perfect. Next we can create the server details. Again, leave blank, 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 blank. And then for this one, we'll set this to MySQL-master. And all the rest can be blank. And now we create the server cert. And lastly, we can create the certificates for the client. So again, leave all these blank except for the common name, which we will be setting to MySQL-client. And then last but not least is the client certificate. Okay, so that's all the certificates created on the master server. What we can do now is actually change the permissions of this directory. So what this does is this sets the ownership to the MySQL user and the MySQL group. It updates the permissions to be a bit more safe. What I've found is that everyone needs at least read and execute permissions on this location. And then lastly, we're just restarting the MySQL server. Awesome, and if you want to do, you could do a systemctl status just to make sure MySQL's happy. Perfect, and then moving on to MySQL2, we're going to edit the MySQL configuration file. We don't need to touch the bind addresses since nothing's connected to this replication side. And what we want to do at the bottom of the file is add these variables. What we're doing is we're setting the server ID to another unique value of 2 because this is the second machine in this setup. We're setting the log bin, the relay log, the log slave updates. This is important, so read only. This ensures that there are no updates on this database, it's read only. And then we're setting the bin log format as well. So you can save this file and exit. What we're going to do next is restart MySQL. We're going to create a directory for these certificates, and then we're going to set those slightly unsafe permissions so that we can move the certificates from the master. And you can see MySQL's come back up, no problem. Okay, so now we're going to come back to the master server and we're going to use a utility called SCP. Now this will allow us to move the certificates across to the client machine without having to manually open up the file, copy the data and paste it. So this will be 3 commands. We'll be moving the CA cert, the client cert and the client key. So this is what the SCP commands look like. Again, they will be in the description. And what you'll have to do for your system is you'll need to update the username and the IP address of the slave system. So we'll say yes and enter the password. And then we'll do the same for the client certificate and the client key. Perfect. So now they're moved over, we can set the permissions so that the MySQL user and group own the cert directory. We'll fix the permissions and we'll restart MySQL. Perfect. So let's go back to the MySQL master and we'll get logged into the MySQL database. So what we need to do here is create a replication user. And this is what the replication side will use to connect to the master. So what we're doing is creating a new user with this username, identified by this password. Again, you're probably going to want to change this password if you're deploying this in a production environment. But for testing, that's fine. Now that the user is created, we need to set the permissions. So we're just giving replication permissions to every database on this master server. And then we'll flush the privileges and we'll exit. What we'll need to do now is run a MySQL dump. Now there's nothing currently in this, but you do need it for the next step. And the password it asks for there is the MySQL root password. Perfect. Now we've got that, we're going to use SCP again to copy it across to the replication server. Awesome. Now that's done, let's go back to MySQL2 and we can import that MySQL file into our database. Again, this is the password for MySQL. So depending on the size of your MySQL backup, that process of importing might take a long time. What we need to do now is we need to get some data from that. So what we're looking for is the master log file and the master log position. We need to make a note of these. So now on the replication side, we're ready to set up replication. What we need to do is get logged into MySQL. Okay, so what we'll do next is we will configure the change master command. This is what we need to run inside MySQL on the replication side to point the replication server across to the master server. So what we need to do is on the master side is we need to get the IP address. And this will be different for your environment. So you can see we're pointing the replication server to the master on this IP address. We're using the replication user and the very insecure replication password. Please make sure you set something more secure in your production environment. We're using the MySQL log file that we got from this command here in the background. And we're using the log position that we also got from the MySQL dump. We're telling it to use SSL, and then we're setting the CA, the client cert, and the client key. Once we've built that, we can copy it and paste it into here. Perfect. And then we can start the slave. And if all has gone well, what we can do is do a show slave status /big G. And the state you're looking for is waiting for source to send event. If you get this state, then you know you're either ready for testing or you're ready for production. What you can do to test is, so on the master server, what we're doing is we're just showing the database. So what we can do is create a new database called mark test. And you can see it's created here. What we should also be able to do on the replication side is show databases and see that it's been created for us from the replication. And if we drop that database, mark test, we can see it's gone on the replication side. So that's everything you need to do to set up MySQL replication on Ubuntu using an SSL connection. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments below, like this video and subscribe for more content.